One of the other areas that I think a lot of people need to talk about is the issue of what you call market apartheid. So this is where you have European companies literally exporting products into Africa that have substandard. So things like powder milk really cannot be sold in Europe, but they can readily actually bring it into the African market. Things like pesticides. There are pesticides that are banned in Europe because they cause cancer, but those pesticides can easily be sold in the African continent, right? We were talking about the issue of decolonization. So from an African perspective, either from a policy or a government or from an individual perspective, what do we need to do in order to counter this kind of market appetite that's going on?
As Martin Luther King Jr. used to say, I cannot ride your back unless you bend down. You know, if you're standing up straight, it's impossible for anybody to ride your back. So Africans keep bending over backwards to allow these things to happen. Now, you mentioned a very, very good example. Let's say something like milk powder. Do you know the farmer who sells their milk to the large milk factories? They sell 1 liter of milk at extremely low prices. So when we say that, for example, in Kenya, that milk is expensive, it is because of capitalism. It is because the factories that are processing this milk, that are pasteurizing this milk, it is because they want to make as much money as possible. Now, picture a scenario where the government puts in place a policy that zero rates import of pasteurizing machines. Even better, puts in place a long-term approach, mid and long-term approach on Kenya producing these pasteurizing machines locally, so that we demystify pasteurizing, meaning that every 50 or so farmers are on their own a milk factory. Yeah. You know, it means that the price of milk can even come down to half of what it is, and it will become a lot more expensive to purchase powder milk or long life milk because the fresh milk is easily available. But do you know, Brian, that the situation is worse in Nigeria? Because at least in Nairobi, you can go to the shop and you'll buy a fresh packet of milk. In Nigeria, it is so difficult. In many parts of a city like Lagos, you can't even purchase the fresh milk. You can't. Yet, the Fulani people and a lot of Nigerians, not just the Fulani, have a lot of livestock. It's not that there's no milk in Nigeria. It's not that there's no milk in Ghana. The problem is that this chronic capitalistic system that we have fueling our economies, they treat these livestock farmers as rubbish. They treat them as mere producers of milk, yet that milk is the main thing that the milk sector is all about. Whether you're talking about cheese or, name it, it all cannot be there if there's no milk, you see. So the reason we have allowed the market appetite to thrive is because in our minds, we continue to associate things like powdered milk as a convenient alternative for the middle class, for the upper class, so that all I have to do is to march into the supermarket, buy 5 kilos of powder milk, and then I can whip it up anytime I want. I don't have to keep going to the shop. And that's the mindset that we as Africans have to get rid of. If there's one thing we have to do as Africans, it is to completely decolonize our minds systematically, so that we're asking ourselves, regarding the dairy sector, what does decolonization look like? And then we would have the answer that every single Kenyan, every single Ugandan, every single Zimbabwean who owns a cow is a treasure to the country and must be treated as a treasure to the country and must be helped to earn optimal returns from their milk. Because if we have a scenario where fresh milk is increasingly available and increasingly affordable, it means that more and more Kenyans, more and more Zimbabweans, more and more Ugandans are going to have money in their pocket. Because what the middle class has been spending on powdered milk, they'll now start spending it on this fresh milk.